Special Envoy discusses with the Saudi officials Yemen peace efforts. Houthi militia continues to deplete the education system in the country. Houthis commit gender-based violence against women in the areas under their control. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Injil Zazi. The head of the Yemeni Leadership Council called on the international community to support Yemen's economy. During his meeting in Aden with the head of the German Mission for Economic Cooperation, El-Alimi briefed the German delegation on the developments of the Yemeni situation, including the dire humanitarian repercussions of the Houthi terrorist attacks on oil facilities. The Yemeni Minister of Defense accused the international community of being lenient with the Houthi militia. This came during a meeting between the Yemeni Minister of Defense with a delegation from the American Democratic Institute. The Yemeni Minister of Defense stressed the need for democratic countries to support the Yemenis in restoring the state and the democratic system. The Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council stressed the importance of supporting the renewal of the truce in Yemen. He stressed in a meeting with the U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen the need to pressure the Houthi group to comply with the international community's appeals to negotiate a comprehensive ceasefire. On the same context, the Saudi ambassador to Yemen and the U.S. envoy to Yemen discussed in Riyadh international efforts to reach a sustainable peace. The meeting reviewed the kingdom's various efforts to support peace efforts and alleviate the human suffering of the people in Yemen. The two sides also discussed ways to enhance cooperation to support security efforts to reach a political solution in Yemen. UN media sources said that the Sanctions Committee on Yemen will hold a meeting on Tuesday. The committee is scheduled to discuss the final report of its panel of international and regional experts.
اسمي نصير معيوب من قبل حبشي لغم يعني كنت رايح ازور الاهل والنسوة وما يعني رحت ما لقيت على اللغم دعست على اللغم وانفجر ما شفت الا الغبار يعني والدم والارجليه خلاص مبتلات. هذا اثر علي كثير جدا يعني بانه خذ يعني كل خلاص انت مبتر الايدي ولا الرجل يعني صعبه يعني انك على تعيين واسره يعني صعب يعني الوضع مزري وصعب. كله شغلي حديد نجاره بناء كان صعب يعني واختلف الحين الوضع يعني صعب انك تقدر تشتغل هذه الشغلات. هذه جريمه انسانيه يعني ما لان ما يعني لو هي صعبه يعني تشل الاخضر واليابس لا تشل عسكري لحاله ولا مقاومه ولا شيء تشله للطارف اصلا اي انسان يجزع كل يعني جريمه انسانيه يعني بمعنى الكلمه.
Joint Forces engineering team discovered the minefield left behind by the Houthi militia in Taiz. The military media reported that a Joint Forces engineering team found a minefield planted on a large area on the international coastline. Hodeidah Governorate launched a campaign to remove slums from the stream of torrents in the city of Houkha. The campaign targeted random buildings located at the entrance to the city.
In coordination with the local authority and judicial department, we have carried out this campaign to remove all unlawful buildings and those who build their houses on the waterway of the torrents. The torrents came before and swept away the houses that were located in their course. We have sent notices to the locals to remove their violations, and we have set a date for the end of the notice. When the time came, we moved to remove all the violations according to the order given by the governor.
In the south of Hodeidah, the Director General of Hayes District chaired a joint meeting to discuss the most important needs concerning people's lives. The meeting discussed water problems in the district and the problems of the displaced in the district.
اتخذنا الكثير من الحلول والمقترحات.
We have received a number of proposals and suggestions, and we discussed them. We are looking forward for the cooperation among the officials to deliver the services to the people.
Houthis continue to tamper with the educational system in the country. The rebels have included major changes with the curriculum. Such changes reflect the malicious sectarian ideology, which aims to brainwash generations of school children. This report has more.
Yemen is going through an educational crisis after a conflict that has lasted for almost 9 years. Many children are growing up without stable access to education, and there are over 2 million kids who are not in school. These lost years of education will have a significant impact because of how crucial education is to Yemen's post-conflict recovery. The number of children experiencing learning disruptions as a direct or indirect result of the conflict is increasing. According to UNICEF, over 2 million children are not attending school. Over 4 million require assistance in obtaining an education, and more than 20% of schools are closed. The collapse of the educational system in Yemen is not only affecting children, but also teachers. A lack of pay has forced thousands of teachers to look for other jobs, while also resulting in the deaths or injuries of students and teachers at or on their way to school. The conflict has also led to 2/3 of Yemen's teachers, over 170,000 in total, to not receive a regular salary. This puts an additional 4 million children at risk of disrupted education or dropping out as unpaid teachers leave the classroom to support their families. Children who do not complete their education are trapped in a non-ending cycle of poverty. Out-of-school children or those who have recently dropped out may never return to school if they are not properly supported. In addition, thousands of families have been forced to stop sending their kids to school, particularly girls, due to the danger and financial effects of the conflict. Almost all schools in Yemen have been damaged in the country's prolonged conflict. At least 1 out of every 4 educational facilities has been destroyed or used for non-educational purposes in the last 8 years. Parties to the conflict are required by international humanitarian law to take all necessary precautions to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. Violence against students, educators, and schools or universities has long-term consequences. It also impedes the recovery process in the country.
Women in Yemen are facing huge challenges due to the war and the collapsing economic situation. Violence against women has increased in recent days, especially in the areas under the Houthi control. This report has more on this.
The Houthi militia expanded its repression of women in Sana'a and other places under its control, amid claims from local and international parties that the organization was expanding its repressive activities and carrying out countless attacks on Yemenis. According to a recent study by the Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms, the Houthis kidnapped more than 380 Yemeni women between September 2014 and August 2022. According to the network, more than 4,200 kidnapped civilians, including women, are currently being detained by the organization with no information on their situations. The abductees are relocated blindfolded, so they cannot know or identify their destinations, according to the reports. Between December 2017 and October 2022, the Zainabiyat Brigade, a women's military organization, perpetrated over 1,444 episodes of abuse against men and women, including arbitrary arrests and incarceration, looting, sexual assault, beatings, and torture. The Houthis also followed Yemeni activists, assaulted sit-ins, and stationed Zainabiyat members at checkpoints in various areas under their control. The brigade was responsible for the deaths of 9 women, 6 of whom died as a result of severe beatings, and 3 who were shot directly. During the same period, the network documented 172 violations against civilians, carrying out 31 raids on service and health facilities, 76 searches in several educational institutions, and 65 attacks on houses of worship and Quran memorization centers. According to the report, the group kidnapped about 571 women and detained 231 in its prisons, supervised by the Zainabiyat, and pointed out that the brigade recruited more than 4,000 new members trained in combat. The center expressed its full sympathy with victims of gender-based violence in a statement released in conjunction with the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It also urged the international community to take decisive steps to end the violence against women and girls, as well as fight to end the wars and conflicts that perpetrate these breaches. Human rights advocates in Sana'a accused the organization of capturing women activists, torturing them, and charging them with prostitution and other offenses in order to deprive them of social support.
Coming next in the news. Houthis loot humanitarian aid and sell them in the black market.
ننشل ندي ماء من الغيل والغيلة بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء وتشجعنا. ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يجي لنا ظهر لأن زحمة ما حد ليه يخلي الجهل يغرق وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا ما نستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا إلا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدر لأنه ما في معي خزانة.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 هي معها استهلاك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة، عاملة كل شغلك الماء.
Welcome back. The United Nations has repeatedly accused the Houthis of looting humanitarian aid and prevent its delivery to war-affected people. According to local sources, those aids are sold in the black market, which is supported by Houthi officials. The following report has more on this.
In Geneva, the United Nations and the humanitarian community launched the Yemen Humanitarian Response Plan for the current year 2023, with the goal of raising $4.3 billion to help the 17.3 million most vulnerable people who require humanitarian assistance as a result of the conflict, displacement, and economic decline exacerbated by natural disasters. Due to the war that started in late March 2015, 2/3 of Yemen's population, or 21.6 million people, will require humanitarian assistance and protection services this year. One of the biggest challenges facing humanitarian work in Yemen is the funding gap, despite the enormous funds required by the annual Humanitarian Response Plan and the pledges announced by donors over the past years. Many Yemenis believe that despite spending billions of dollars annually on the implementation of the UN plan, it does not seem to have a positive impact either on humanitarian or economic situation, as Yemen is the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with rising rates of poverty, unemployment, and deterioration of social services. The distribution of humanitarian aid, as well as the interference of local organizations affiliated with them in the relief process and its distribution through specific names or fake lists, is a problem that many Yemenis, particularly in areas controlled by the Houthi militia, complain about. As a result, the aid eventually ends up being sold on the black market. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Yemen anticipates that humanitarian needs will remain constant in 2023, and that the resilience of the vulnerable population will deteriorate as a result of the ongoing collapse of basic services. As a result of the instability of the Yemeni rial, millions of Yemenis are suffering from the complex effects of violence, the ongoing economic crisis, and severe funding shortages, which have resulted in high levels of food insecurity and a lack of access to basic services after more than 9 years of conflict. Martin Griffiths, the United Nations humanitarian coordinator, stated in his latest briefing to the UN Security Council that the number of people in Yemen in need of humanitarian assistance and protection services will reach 21.6 million people by 2023.
I, of course, also fear that 2023 will be another extremely difficult year for the people of Yemen. Humanitarian needs remain alarmingly high as the country's economy continues to weaken and basic services hang by a thread. Meanwhile, people's access to humanitarian assistance is being impeded as aid agencies are forced to contend with an increasingly challenging operating environment, as well as a funding landscape which does not encourage. Mr. President, in 2023, this year, an estimated 21.6 million people across Yemen will need humanitarian assistance and protection services, and it is precisely because this is such a high percentage of the total population of Yemen that the United Nations has for so long talked about the humanitarian crisis in Yemen as being the worst that we see globally.
The UN representative pleaded with the international community to support the new humanitarian appeal and close funding gaps for life-saving programs in order to continue helping the Yemeni people.
Exchange stores in the Houthi-controlled areas published lists of suspended remittances and directed the beneficiaries to quickly collect them. Such a move came after an official leaked list of suspended remittances, accusing the rebels of benefiting from such a cash. This report has more.
In a process that raised doubts about its banking activities and operations, many exchange companies and money transfer networks rushed to publish lists of their forgotten transfers years ago, calling on beneficiaries to quickly receive or recover them. The matter raised a lot of questions, especially after they sent text messages to the beneficiaries informing them of the money transfers and inviting them to quickly receive them, which confirmed that the beneficiaries' numbers were available. Bankers confirmed that publishing statements of forgotten transfers is preemptive strike after leaks revealed the looting of forgotten transfers estimated at billions of Yemeni rial. The bankers pointed out that the issue of the money transfers looting was not created today, and that just because it was made public recently does not imply that it was not happening behind the scenes for several years. According to observers, the process of manipulating the funds of forgotten transfers was carried out by the central bank in Sana'a and exchange companies that were working to show that the remittances had been received. Observers believe that the process of recovering remittance funds that have been withheld for years will cause great damage to exchange companies and networks and may lead to bankruptcy of some of them as a result of the malicious seizure of that money. These companies are currently attempting to avoid bankruptcy by making it difficult to owners to recover remittance funds and setting impossible conditions for handing them over. Since the Houthi militia's occupation of state institutions in 2014, the number of exchange companies and money transfer networks has increased, indicating that they carry out money laundering operations managed and supervised by the leaders of the Houthi militia.
A charity dish festival was organized in the interim capital of Aden. The event aims to provide food to the elderly people in the asylum house. More is in the following report.
A local school in Aden has held a heritage exhibition and philanthropic meal spread, the proceeds of which were donated to nursing homes and cancer hospitals. The event, which aimed to highlight Yemeni folklore, saw school children running several booths and leading traditional dance performances.
This exhibition's message is that heritage still exists among us, and we continue to learn from the legacies of our predecessors. This current generation cannot prosper if they do not draw upon history. Today's initiative helped the students learn more about ancient civilizations. We would like to thank the event organizers.
People from several governorates of the Republic attended the exhibition, giddy with delight, and they chanted and echoed traditional tunes. Bridal dresses could be seen throughout the exhibition as many people were eager to display the traditional clothing of their governorates.
هذا الاحتفال وهذا الكرنفال.
This carnival honors the heritage of various Yemeni governorates, including Sana'a, Lahd, Hadramaut, Al-Mahra, Aden, and others.
The organizers aim to foster creative projects and educate attendees on Yemeni folklore, as well as to embrace natural skills and build bridges across education departments in numerous governorates.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Special Envoy discusses with the Saudi officials Yemen peace efforts. Houthi militia continues to deplete the education system in the country. Houthis commit gender-based violence against women in the areas under their control. This is the end of the news. It was Injil Zazi. Thank you for watching.